The purpose of this video is to clarify your role as a leader in creating an environment of psychological safety. You play a key role and I will help you understand aspects of that role. Let's jump in and remember that this is your reflective space as a leader, your opportunities to stop for a moment and consider how you can respond to different activities. So take your time, reflect and stop the video if you need it to consider a thing or take some notes. In terms of process expectations, dependent on your maturity or confidence level or experience with psychological safety, some of these things might feel quite new to you and require a bit more reflection or let's say time to sink in, or else it might be things that you've heard before or that you know or that you have an experience with actually living. So dependent on that, also take your time or use this resource in the video as you preferred. Let's look at the 5 key contributions you can have as a leader in creating psychological safety. First, the most important thing you can do as a leader is to be responsive. A responsive leader is one who acts and considers your action and reflects upon how can I impact the situation to a better environment or to more motivated team members, let's say. Responsiveness is about acting, it's about being humble and being willing to owning potential failure or experiment with your people. And you should know by now that in driving psychological safety, you won't be an infinite success. You will make mistakes, you will make more unsuccessful things, and it is totally normal. It's actually evidential that we will have to encounter these things. The important part is that we reflect upon those and come back sometimes to the team to improve and do things differently and own your fallibility whenever something ends up in a way you didn't plan. But life is hectic. There are many, let's say, stressors around, and sometimes we get caught up or frustrated or irritated, or we cut people off unintentionally. And the important part is just to get back on track and not lose all hope that you will ever succeed with creating psychological safety, but get back to the case when you lose it momentum. As a leader, you can be reflective on 3 different levels, let's say. Reflect upon yourself as a leader, your actions, your feelings, your states, your sense of progression. And the same you can do with others. How do your team members respond? What are their reactions? What are their sayings? What do they tell you? And then the organization overall, or the bigger context you're part of. How does this work relate to crossover work with other people in the organization, or how does the work with psychological safety relate to the work you try to unfold in the organization? The next 4 factors are actually factors from transformational frameworks, where we say that people are actually, your team members, people around you, including yourself, are actually willing to change their behavior to something new. Maybe there are some habits or actions you should start doing when creating a safer environment, and people will do this on 4 conditions. There are 4 things that we need to set in place for this to work. First of all, people need to see role models, someone acting in the way we want others to act. And here you have a key role as a leader. You're in the center of this. People mimic your actions. They look in your direction for guidance on what is right and wrong. So be aware that people need role models. That can either be you, or you can help put some of your team members that you consider as role models, put them forefront, put a bit spotlight on their actions whenever they do good things, and make it flourish, make it visible to people who are the role models in this organization. Many will follow role models, but it's only the few that are willing to be the early adapters and the ones who start. Second condition is that it should make sense to people. What is the meaning behind creating this environment of psychological safety? Why can't we just do things the way we used to do? And this is important that you create a strong narrative, that you help people both by repeating over and over again. What is the purpose? Why is it important? How do we see the traction? Why should we choose these actions over these actions? And do you see help them see the outcome and the product of your transition, so to speak. And this takes repetition. So be aware that Even though you might feel that you're saying the same things over and over again, why is it important? Why should we work with psychological safety? People need time to let it sink in. They need to see this in connection with the role models for it to make sense. And be aware that you can impact the sense making in people's head, both by obviously telling, but also as much by showing or connecting events to this narrative. Also point maybe to other storytellers or sense makers than yourself. Have leader colleagues or other leaders in the organizations or stakeholders contribute with chapters to this sense making around psychological safety. Overall, people need to believe, why do we do this, and why should I care, and why should I change my behavior in order to follow. Third condition is that we need a sufficient level of competence within these skills that we want people to show, or these actions we want them to take. And obviously we are in the middle of a training sprint with the exact purpose of increasing competence and training the behaviors and actions that will foster psychological safety. But be aware, you as a leader can have the more maybe holistic view on competence. What about your own competences? And what about the different roles in the team? Are there certain roles that should maybe have stronger skills because they facilitate a lot of process or meetings or something like that? Your own skills and ability. It's not only in the meeting session that you have impact on psychological safety. Obviously, you also have this in one-to-ones, business reviews, and let's say the more macro view on the organization, the overall leadership practices and processes here. So do we have the sufficient level of competencies for people to be courageous enough to join? It's a bit like soccer practice. It's nice to have been on the practice pitch a few times before you join a match in a weekend, right? You want to know how to tie your boots before joining an important match. And it's the same with competencies in new arenas where we might not have any history or trajectory of success from previous times. Fourth and final condition is that the formal structures and processes of the organization must align with what the role models do, what we say it is the purpose of psychological safety, the competencies. We should also have arenas and playing fields. Where do we see the alignment between a psychologically safe environment and our ways of doing business or making decisions or inviting others to participate, or for people's ability to have influence on the work that they're doing? Specifically, as a leader, you have the possibility and maybe even mandate to change and tweak some of these processes and make them align better with the motion you want to create in the organization. So if people don't know when to pay attention to psychological safety and what to do and how does these link with the overall aim, it's your role to, within your sphere of influence, to tweak processes so that they align with the things you do. Now that I've presented the 5 key contributions, I will give you the time to reflect, supported by a reflective sheet I've put here, so that you can take 5-7 minutes, write some notes on your specific situation related to these 5 key contributions. What are maybe some next steps you should be aware of? Where are you strong already? And what are next relevant things for you to improve, let's say? Where do you have deficits? And what will maybe hinder the progression in your team? You will have specific areas that might be more relevant than others, and for you to consider these are an important part. And take the time now in this exercise and pause the video now.